we talked a little bit yesterday with the intro to stocks on dividend stuff. So again, a dividend is a way that a company kind of draws you in. It's just going to be money you receive as a stockholder. Now again, not every stock has a dividend. Some do, some don't. There's ways we can find that out ahead of time. But it's just a little extra bonus you can get depending. It's not just based on stock price. So that dividend is called, technical term here, an annual yield, which is the percent of the stock price you receive from your dividend. So like, for instance, just kind of as an FYI, let's say you had a $100 stock that paid a 4% annual yield. 4% of $100, 0.04, means you'd get, for every share that you had, you'd get a $4 dividend annually. Those numbers can go up and down, and if your stock goes up, your dividend could go up. Now, if your stock goes down, your dividend value could go down. It's a little bit more of a risky proposition. So here, this is kind of a duh question. Is it better to have a high annual yield or a low? Well, high, because I'm gonna make more money from that. Just kind of a common sensor here. And so when we're trying to figure this out, if I wasn't given what those values are, and more times than not, as we're going to see, you're going to be given those statistics. So what you would typically do here to figure out your total annual dividend is you would need to know the dividend per share and multiply that by the number of shares that you have. So, I mean, you're going to get more of an annual dividend if you have 50 shares, than if you only have 20, or if the dividend's higher somewhere. So if you're given the per share, you can figure it out that way. And then your yield would be your dividend per share divided by the cost per share. Nothing complex mathematically. Again, just getting used to the vocabulary and where things go. So if I know what the dividend is per share, which again, sometimes you can get in what's called the white paper of stock, then you can go and find out the current cost, and the yield can move, even daily. So if I'm looking for the annual dividend, which is the easier one of the two, again, straightforward. Take your shares, take the amount of your dividend, so it's really that straightforward. It really is. It really is. Know how much you're going to get per, multiply them, and go. So, I mean, we'll get one more in here just so we don't think that that was a fluke. So again, total means how much money will be coming back into my pocket if I'm holding this stock when the dividend is given, which is another thing we'll have to talk about, because some dividends aren't just given once a year. Some are given monthly, quarterly, it depends. That's why we got to read stuff carefully to see when we're going to get paid. Now, to figure out what percentage you're getting, a little different story. So let's see here. Oh, we're going to have to find the dividend first. Okay, so Emory purchased 140 shares at $110.20 per share. The company pays the annual dividends of 52 cents per share. Okay, so the annual dividend. So I need shares times the dividend per share, like we were doing up above. Not bad stuff. So 72.80 if we're holding those. And then to find the yield, you're still going to take that dividend per share, but now you're going to divide it times the price per share. So you can see if you have any experience, oops, except I got to put the right number in. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay, there we go. That's better. So you're looking, you're like, well, wait a minute. So let's put the decimal first. So I got like 0.0047 if I'm going to a few here. That's not the yield. The yield's a percent. So if we take that decimal like we do anytime and multiply it by 100, that's still not very much. But again, that yield can change on literally a daily basis. Because what can change every day in the stock market? How much is a share? Now this could stay the same, but if tomorrow this is $112, that yield just went down. If this tomorrow goes down to $100, my yield just went up. So there's kind of this checks and balance thing, which is why some people like doing the dividend stocks. So again, just to make sure that everything's labeled and that we kind of got things down here. So the dividend, number of shares times how much I'm getting per share. And then the yield is that per share value divided by however much I paid myself for that share. And again, as you're starting to see, yields a lot of the time are not huge for the most part. Many times when you deal with a yield, it can be under 1%. Sometimes if you're real fortunate, you can get a few percent, but it's not going to be something ridiculous most of the time. And if it is, you need to have your feelers up, like, why are they paying such a large percentage for me to buy their stock? What's the deal here? So dividend-wise, again, until we dig a little deeper and start looking at what some of those are and what that's going to mean for your portfolio, good starting place to kind of be. So again, the practice for that is on the page right after. And like I've said before, you don't need to do 6 of those and another 5 down here. If you do half of each, just to make sure you're good. So one last thing with stocks for today. Then I will, like I said, I wanted to double down because this all goes together. The purchasing of stock, the paying of a dividend. So now when I get to the end and I'm selling, okay, there's a lot of things we can take into consideration here, but we're going to try again and keep things basic. So when you make a purchase of a stock as you're working your way along, all you've got to do is make sure, I mean, again, a little bit of common sense here. Now, this is the simplistic view. So if I bought a stock at, I don't know, $80 a share and I sold it for $85, okay, I've made some money. That makes sense. I sold it for more than I bought it. But you also have to take into consideration when you sell it, if you're looking to see like profits for taxes or things, if you got dividends, those dividends count into your profit. Now, we're not going to go into that type of complexity, at least not right away, but something, again, to consider. So, sell at a loss, you lose money from the initial amount you invested. I mean, you also, to be honest, I mean, you could be like, you sold the stock for less than you bought it. It's what it is. And so, just like we had to pay our broker money when we bought the stock, you're not going to get off on the other side either. You're also going to have to pay when you go to sell it. That's just the way it works, at least currently in the financial system. So my net sale is how much I sold my stock for, but minus the commission that I'm going to owe the broker for completing the transaction. So once I've seen that, then I can take that net sale minus the total I paid at the start. So here's where it gets a little more complicated. It's not just, I bought the stock for 85, I sold it for 90, I made a $5 profit on each share. Now I got to go back and I got to see, well, wait a minute. How much did I pay for the commission when I sold? How much did I pay for my stock and my commission when I started? Did I still make money now? Did I just make less, or now am I taking a loss? So we're going to have to be aware of that. So and I need to add one more thing over here to the side here. It doesn't mean, because you're like, wait a minute, Hardy, these are like the same thing. So what is changing the order going to make a difference for here? The order is just going to have a difference on, you're always going to do the bigger value minus the smaller. That's all it is. The formula is the same for profit and loss. It's just, which one is it going to be? Am I going to be in the negative or am I going to be in the positive? So, net sale, we'll just do one of each of these because this is really straightforward. So net sale, I owned 125 shares of pop-up, sold the stock for $78.05 a share, paid a commission. What's the net sale? Okay. So I've got 125 shares, and I sold it at $78.05. I'm not going to write that number yet, but I am going to pull it up on here. Paid a sales commission of $29.95. So I do that first part and then subtract the commission, which again, it could be a flat fee like it is here. It could be a percentage of your sale. Something you're going to want to know about your broker before you start buying stuff. So then my net sale, when I'm looking at this, oops, I went too far, didn't I? I just did net sale. We're going to switch these around. This is the net sale. I added the commission in. Goofy man. This is the regular sale, which was $9,756.25. Just as one other side note, my apologies for switching the order up on you there, is that when you go to talk to an accountant or you're doing your own taxes on this, this would be the amount that you would use for paying tax on. You do get to subtract commissions and fees and all these other things that the brokers are charging you, which is always going to be a nice thing to do too. So, okay, to wrap up things before, again, next week we get into a little deeper stuff. So, still going to do net sale and profit or loss. So, Asher, all right, paid $12.90.86 for 40 shares of efficient mover stock. Sold the stock for $36.90 a share. Paid a sales commission of $25. What's the profit or loss? Okay, so we sold the stock for $36.90 a share times the 40 shares that I owned. But then I still have to subtract the commission. So let's see here. So $36.90 times 40 minus 25. So $1,451 is my net sale. But, and I'm going to assume that it was included when it said I paid a total of $12.90.86, since it doesn't say anywhere else about having to add on the initial commission. So we'll just subtract that out. And it would be $160.14, and since I paid less than I sold it for, I do want to take note that that would be a profit. So just so you have one example of both to kind of reference, I got one last one we'll do. Way at the bottom, we're going to do Jenna here. So this last one then, Jenna paid a total of $4,054.10 for 100 shares of Tasty Treats stock. She sold the stock for $28.40 a share. Paid sales commission of $31.50. What was the profit or loss? Okay, whoa, throwing pens. So she sold at $28.40, 100 shares, and had to pay, which is hence why we're subtracting, the $31.50. So let's see here. So $28.08.50 was my net sale after expenses. And so now I'm going to take that, and we see that we paid at the beginning a total of $4,054.10. Yeah, this isn't going to turn out well. Meaning I'm taking a loss, the negative, of $1,245.60, which also, by the way, for future reference, would be tax deductible. So it doesn't, you don't take all the pain. The government will take a little bit of it for you, even though we'd rather make a profit and have to pay taxes on that. So again, on page 7 that we had before, on page 9 when we're over here for practice, again, just a couple of each type, just to reinforce it. Again, the math is not complex. It's just to kind of get some of the terminology and what am I doing with it again. So when we get into some of the bigger stuff next week, we're not having to double back on that stuff. So with that, just a quick reminder on here. Said we will get into a short quiz mid next week and start to build on some of this, get into mutual funds and some other ways that you can do some speculative investing as we